want to spend a moment with our guests talking about the performance of Nirmala Sitharaman. One is to talk about the performance, Rajiv Kumar, of the economy. The other is to rate the finance minister herself. We'll discuss how she did in the budget in just a moment, but how do you think she's been as finance minister in comparison with, say, Pranam Mukherjee, Chidambaram, Piyush Goyal, Arun Jaitley? What's your broad sense?
Well, she's done a fine job. I mean, she's held on to the, held on to the fiscal consolidation path that she was supposed to do. She's not, she's not let, the sort of purse strings go, sort of wide open. Her GST collections have been improving. The improvement on direct tax collections, the coverage of the direct tax having increased so much, the digitization of the entire tax collection process. I think all of that means very good. But the one thing that I would say is that the finance ministry's clout that used to be there in the earlier days when I worked in the finance ministry since 1991, with Dr. Manmohan Singh. I remember from 91 to 95, the finance ministry drove the entire reform process. That I think is now sort of, I find that a little weak, as it were. The finance ministry's role in becoming, as it were, the the sort of the pioneer and the pusher of reforms. That's weakened a bit.
No, but some would say, Mr. Kumar, is that because you've got infrastructure ministries which have also got specific targets to achieve, and therefore it's not all up to the finance ministry to drive the engine of growth, but reform can take place through physical infrastructure in particular in some of the other ministries as well?
No, that's true. That can always...
Or is it because of a dominant PMO?
I think you got that right. And that's true as well. There is a dominant PMO. But also I think...
no, but it works well. If, for example, you have a dominant PMO and an over-charismatic or highly flamboyant finance minister, they're bound to be clashes. She gets the memo, she understands the direction that the Prime Minister wants to plow in, and they work as a team. Let's imagine it was somebody who had differences and a mind of his own.
At the same time, remember Arun Jaitley Saab's days, when the finance minister, he was the finance minister, and there was a great rapport between the finance minister and the PMO, and the two teams worked together like the wheels of a chariot, the two wheels of a chariot. Now that for me is the finance ministry's ideal role, which is to be able to give forthright advice to the Prime Minister, to the PMO, or to anybody else, and then push for those reforms which are difficult.
Okay. Subhash Garg, your sense of the performance of the finance minister relative to some of our peers?
So that obviously changes from time to time. We had seen...
You don't have to be diplomatic anymore,
no,
Mr.
I always be frank.
Yes.
You would have seen it in my book. We also make policy. I've described the 2 years in finance ministry in very great detail and very frankly. So to respond to your question, it changes from time to time. Indira Gandhi had a very strong PMO. At that time, the finance ministry played second fiddle, so to say. But Manmohan Singh's time, the PMO was more nudging by silence and all, and the finance ministry was in the forefront, what Rajiv talked about. But in Narendra Modi's time, in the first term, Arun Jaitley was still a reasonably dominant, significant voice in terms of reform, new programs and all. Looking from that point of view, I don't think you can attach any particular program, including CapEx and all, which have taken place in last 4 years or 5 years to Nirmala Sitharaman. But she has been a good executioner. Whatever is told or decided, then she has gone ahead and delivered that. I don't agree with Rajiv Kumar's opinion that the government has or she has done well on the fiscal consolidation front. In fact, we now are running 6% to GDP as fiscal deficit for the 4th year running. This is one of the highest long-term fiscal deficits in the country. So that fiscal consolidation is nowhere. Okay. There was a casual comment in 21-22 budget that we'll bring down to 4.5% in 25-26, which is actually much beyond what is the legal statutory requirement of 3% of fiscal deficit. So we have actually done very
But
poorly
Subhash,
on the...
no finance minister has ever met the statutory requirement, and the 3%.
No, Arun Jaitley did it.
Only 1 year.
In 2018.
Just 1 year.
No, the law was amended. This government itself in 2018 amended the FRBM Act and incorporated two criterion there.
Okay.
Fiscal deficit 3%, loan or debt to
We've
GDP
just received
40%.
word from Parliament that the Cabinet has approved the interim budget. The Finance Minister has now left the Cabinet meeting. The Cabinet meeting, though, is still on. The Finance Minister's family is with her in Parliament. The interim budget has been approved by the Union Cabinet and will be presented on the floor of the House in exactly 30 minutes from now. Coming back, Rajdeep, to Nirmala Sitharaman. She may not have the flamboyance of a Chidambaram or the heft of a Pranam Mukherjee or even that of Arun Jaitley, but at a time when other world economies have been faring much worse, she's kept India on a very steady course.
Look, I think you've got to give Nirmala Sitharaman credit for the fact that despite limited political equity of her own, I mean, she's not a sort of mass leader by any stretch of imagination. She's in a very low profile way held her course. I mean, she was subject to a lot of criticism, you will recall, especially during the COVID years, during the lockdown period. Relatively speaking, therefore, I think what she's provided, and I think this is the strength of the Modi government, is a sense of stability. A sense that, there's nothing going to dramatically change 3 months from now, 6 months from now. I think what happened in the previous government because of demonetization was there was a sense of disruption that took place. And I think it took time for the government to recover from the fallout of that, from 2017 to 2019, if you look at that period. There was a sense that both with GST as well as demonetization coming back to back, the familiar criticism was far too much disruption. I think in contrast, in the last 5 years, barring that 1 year of COVID, the first year of COVID, I think you have to give Nirmala Sitharaman full marks for staying the course. She's not tried to do anything flamboyant, which is perhaps her strength.
I think on reform, we have a very significant things. There are 3 reforms which were introduced in the second term, 3 big reforms. On the agriculture side, there were 3 farm laws. On the labor side, there were 3 or 4 labor codes. And on the disinvestment privatization, the government came up with a policy of privatizing everything except the strategic sectors, right? On all 3, actually the government has gone back and not delivered anything. The farm laws were undone, the labor laws have not been sort of notified, and the disinvestment and the privatization is not taken. But what has done differently is that there is no noise, there is no disruption, there is no sort of conflict within the government or public. And these 3 reforms which are not done have quietly sort of quietened down.
As I said, I think with the Modi government, and it also suits the PMO to have a relatively low profile finance minister, not someone who's sort of trying to push herself, unlike the past. So when you mentioned the previous instances, they were finance ministers who also carried a lot of political heft. Particularly Pranam Mukherjee was virtually seen as an alternate power center in the government. And I think for a period that weakened the UPA or the ability of the PMO to chart a course. There was this great debate that took place at times over some of the steps like the retrospective tax that was brought in by Mr. Mukherjee. And there was, you'd speak to PMO officials and they'd say, no, this was Mr. Mukherjee's decision. Almost as if the PMO did not have the power to stop the
that's not a happy situation.
No, not a happy situation
give
at all.
the finance minister her due also in terms of zero scam anywhere in the government. And the finance ministry has kept a very sharp eye on that.
Finance ministry has never had scams.
No, they have not. No, but look, I don't want to go into instances, but there have been situations there. Also, the fact that she has worked the team very well, led by very able bureaucrats, at this point of time, and there's been never any sort of any news of any rancor or dissonance coming out of the team there.